It's a bit of a feat how the developers at Sega have managed to create a long-running RPG sequel that at once feels entirely familiar to longtime fans, while also being perfectly accessible for curious newcomers. Most of that is because Valkyria Chronicles 4 feels so identical to its originator, but that's not to say the series doesn't have any new tricks. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm gonna tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today we're fighting for the Federation in Valkyria Chronicles 4. I haven't been this excited for a JRPG since Persona 5 came out. Valkyria Chronicles always had a lot of unique and interesting twists on the RPG format that made it stand out from the crowd. From its painterly art style and chapter select book to mechanical quirks like leveling by class instead of character and its weird real-time turn-based hybrid gameplay, Valkyria Chronicles always did everything differently. And for me in particular, it really helps so you can power through one of these in like 20 hours instead of suffering through a 100-hour slog of random encounters. Valkyria is the two things I love in a game. It's unique, and it's padding-free. In other words, this is my jam! And, well, this is a Valkyria Chronicles game, alright. At first glance, the game feels almost identical to the original of a decade past. The only big addition to the series is the Grenadier class, which is fucking broken, and does actually force you to change up how you play a little bit. But by and large, the formula is the same. For those who don't quite know how Valkyria Chronicles works, let me give you the quick rundown. There are two major phases, book mode and combat. You start in book mode, which gives you a series of dialogues and cutscenes, but also lets you upgrade your troops and their equipment. It's basically your usual RPG pause menu and a chapter select rolled into one. And when you hit a combat chapter, you start controlling characters directly on the battlefield. You and the AI take turns moving troops around from this top-down view of the map, but once you actually select a soldier, you assume direct control and run them around the battlefield in real time. Each of your troops are divided into different equipment classes that all have their own specialties and roles, along with a list of individual personality quirks that can affect their performance for good or ill. And a lot of the fun in combat is getting all those different pieces to work cohesively together and push the front line back. That's the basic format, and it hasn't really changed much in the past decade.
War. War never changes.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. After all, I definitely enjoyed the first game, but it doesn't exactly give me a whole lot to talk about. Almost everything works exactly the same, but looks prettier while doing it. And credit where credit's due, the game is pretty. The developers have clearly learned a trick or two about how to better leverage their engine, because the cutscenes are far more dynamic and impressive than I'm used to from this series. And I'm not just talking about a few fancy new shaders here. The actual direction behind a lot of the game's cutscenes feels like a step up. And that first scene where Raz is moving around on the tank and soldiers are popping up out of the grass feels more technically complex and impressive than some of the original's biggest moments. And it's not just the visuals either. Across almost every one of its systems, Valkyria Chronicles 4 just feels more sophisticated. Already, only 5 hours in, I've seen a greater variety in mission and narrative structure than past titles had in their entirety. I've had missions hand me extra NPC reinforcements, had the conditions of previous battles carry over to the next one, and even had this early multi-phase mission that had me shooting signal towers in addition to all of my usual objectives. I'll admit, I never played the second or third games in the series, so I missed a few rungs on the evolutionary ladder, but dang, this series has gotten flexible. The formula is still the same, but the developers are so much more willing to play around with it these days, and it's been universally to the game's benefit. So far, every mission's put me in a unique position, and I can't wait to see what else they'll do to keep things mixed up. And on the narrative side, the game's also broadened its palette. Dialogue choices that used to be contained to these mugshots now occasionally get a little extra flair to them, and chapter structure is also less restricted, with multi-battle chapters being far more frequent and individual chapter length varying more as needed. The story itself is still getting going. As with most of the other titles in the series, it takes place during what's basically World War II with magical superweapon women thrown in. This entry follows Squad E of the Federation Ranger Corps, crack troops on the Allies' equivalent side of the war. And through a miraculous sequence of coincidences, a small group of childhood friends, all from the same hometown, managed to land in this same elite squad, including squad commander Claude Wallace. It feels a little bit contrived, but you know what? It makes for some good drama, so who cares? And the story so far has been following two threads. The first details the events of Operation Northern Cross, a Hail Mary military op by the Federation to drive all the way to the Empire's capital that is going about as well as an invasion of Russia does. And meanwhile, the game spends a lot of its downtime between the major events of the war, filling us in on the various connections between the main characters, and why everybody tolerates Raz even though he's basically the lovable douchebag hothead archetype if you forgot to write the lovable part. There are also these fun little side missions called squad stories. Basically, once you've had a few of the less fleshed out rank-and-file squad mates develop some chemistry on the battlefield by deploying in missions together, you get a special chapter exploring their backstories and connections, and once you finish it, they get a boost to their abilities. Side characters that just start as a voice and set of personality quirks get a bit more depth and life to them, which makes it a great side diversion. So after all that, what does 5 hours with Valkyria Chronicles 4 get you? Well, I'm through 4 out of 18 chapters, so admittedly not quite a quarter of the way there. And as with any other RPG, it's not really a game you can just put down half-finished. But the time I have spent with it has been exceptional. It basically feels like the original Valkyria Chronicles, but better in every way, and as a fan of that original, that leaves me with very little to complain about. For those who are new to the series, there's no real foreknowledge required to jump in, and longtime fans will feel right at home. Valkyria Chronicles 4's changes are much like Variance and a Species. Its DNA is within 1% of the game that started the series, but it still acts differently enough to feel like its own separate entity, and it's definitely worth picking up. Hey, do you believe that your time is the most valuable thing you have? Do you want to find more games that respect that time? This channel is all about finding games that don't pad themselves and can be completed in a reasonable amount of time. So if that sounds appealing to you, then consider hitting that subscribe button. But regardless, thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.